A lot of people find JavaScript a bit weird. They are not able to understand the corner cases of JavaScript. They sometimes also rant about the fact that, okay, we are not able to understand how JavaScript is working. Hey everyone, I'm Sanket Singh. I'm working as a software engineer at Google and welcome back to my channel. So guys, in this video, I'm going to talk about that if you are going to start your programming journey, or maybe you know a bit of programming and you want to start your web development journey in JavaScript, then what are some really important topics and what are the key important milestones that you need to have in order to learn JavaScript, right? So I've been working with JavaScript for quite some time. I started learning JavaScript back when I was in my college, right? I was in second year when I started learning JavaScript. To be very honest, I was really fascinated about what extreme limits this language can touch. Since then, I've been in constant touch with JavaScript. I've been developing a lot of different type of applications in JavaScript. As you already know, JavaScript is nowadays in front end, back end, mobile apps everywhere, right? So I've also done a lot of work around JavaScript in multiple internships of mine, as well as full-time engineer at LinkedIn also and at InterviewBit also. Apart from that, I also sometimes as well teach JavaScript to a lot of students. So that's why I wanted to definitely discuss this thing in this video, that what are some really important steps and how you should go forward for learning JavaScript in 2022. So without any further delay, let's just start. But before starting the video, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel and you found the video and the whole content of the channel useful enough, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you never miss a video whenever we are going to put a new video on the channel. So without any further delay, let's just start. When you are going to start learning JavaScript, or let's say any other language, the first and the foremost thing that you should start with is the basic programming construct, right? When I say programming construct, then I mean that you should start learning with basic things like how to initialize a variable, how to assign a variable a value, right? Things like these, data types, what are the different data types? So in JavaScript, you have different primitive data types. So a lot of people, if they don't learn JavaScript in a proper specific manner, they feel that everything here is function or an object, but that's not the case. JavaScript also has got some definite primitive values like numbers, strings, boolean, etc., right? So you can definitely go through the documentation of JavaScript to learn about different data types, how these data types are handled, right? So there are various different, I would say, unique type of data types as well that exist in JavaScript, and definitely JavaScript has got a lot of corner cases in the terms of how they deal with numbers. Like in JavaScript, there is a +0 and a -0 as well as there is something called as NaN, that is not a number, which is obviously used to show an invalid number wherever you have to do. Right, so there are a lot of corner cases that you need to learn with the basic data types only. That is also going to take a lot of time of yours, right? After that, I would highly recommend you guys to start learning Coercion, right? You might feel that, okay, if you have already learned a bit of JavaScript, then you might feel that why I'm telling you to learn Coercion so early in the stage of JavaScript. Because Coercion is going to lay down the very basic foundation of everything that is going to be there in JavaScript. So let's say if you are using conditionals or you are using comparison operators, anything that you are using, in that case, how those conditionals are working, how two entities, how two data types are getting, I would say, compared in JavaScript, a lot of things are going to depend on Coercion. What is Coercion? Coercion is interconversion of the data types based on the corresponding operation that you are doing in JavaScript. So Coercion is, I believe, a very important topic, and sometimes people don't understand how exactly Coercion works and feel that JavaScript is kind of weird, but that's not the case. Everything that JavaScript does is specifically in very well detail mentioned in the documentation of JavaScript, right? So you can definitely go and learn about all the different rules. You can learn about the abstract operations, how exactly abstract operation works, how exactly different coercive operation works, right? What is to boolean, what is to string, what is to number, all of these operations you should learn about, and that is going to give you a very firm base around how exactly different conditionals are going to work. And then you can move forward and learn the other programming constructs, like, as I said, conditionals and basic loops, because conditionals and basic loops are going to be used to form the basic foundational logic of your algorithms, right? Let's say if you're writing a front-end application or a back-end application, in both of the cases you have to take some conditional calls that, okay, whether to render this or not, whether to make an API call or not. So all these conditional checks are going to be done using if and else, right? Apart from that, if you have to do a repetitive task, then obviously loops are going to really be helpful. So you can start with basic loops like while loop and for loop, and then later you can go to much more enhanced loops in JavaScript that we are going to definitely discuss further. So this is the part of the basic programming construct that I believe one should start with in JavaScript.
Before moving forward, I would like to thank the sponsor of this video, that is Cryo.do. Cryo.do is the world's only work experience based learning platform to learn the latest tech skills in the market. Cryo Launch by Cryo.do is India's largest tech externship opportunity for developers to showcase their skills and get placed in the best product based companies that are available in the market. For example, Upgrad, Urban Company, Oracle, Paytm, Grofers, Cred, BharatPay, etc. Cryo-launch externships are professional project building opportunities where you work on a real tech problem from the industry. To become a cryo-launch developer, all you have to do is just crack a coding test. Once selected, you build externship project to prove your developer skills and get hired into amazing product-based companies. And all of it is just for free. You pay nothing at all to become a cryo-launch developer. Your effort is the only investment. So, what are you waiting for? Join the Cryo Launch program launched by Cryo.do. For details, you can find the special link in the description section below so that you can book a slot for Cryo Launch coding assessment. I would highly recommend you guys to check out Cryo Launch and start your coding journey with Cryo.
After the basic programming construct, because JavaScript is a functional language, it is really important to understand how exactly functions work in JavaScript, right? Functions are going to be a really important entity when you will be writing any JavaScript code, right? If you will see the modern libraries like React, so in the latest version of React, they in the documentation themselves write that functional components are going to be better in a lot of use cases. So we need to actually understand how exactly functions work, because if you are able to understand how functions work, a lot of things in JavaScript are going to be cakewalk for you. So learn about what are different type of function, how you can declare a function, what is a function expression, and what is a normal function declaration. You need to understand the difference between a function expression and a function declaration, right? You need to know that why function expressions should be named, why they should not be named, right? Things like these. Apart from that, there are some advanced functional programming concepts that you need to start learning. And the first one of them is scopes, right? So scopes is something that is not only present in functional programming, but as you already know that in C, C++, Java as well, scopes exist. But in case of JavaScript or any other functional programming language, the concept of scopes become much more wider and much more enhanced and much more advanced, right? In JavaScript also there is different scoping mechanism. There is a block scope, there is a function scope, there is a global scope, etc. Apart from that, how exactly this scoping is done? So you need to learn about the concept of lexical analysis of JavaScript code, right? Because JavaScript is not completely interpreted. JavaScript code is first read for the lexical analysis so that the scope resolution can be done, and then again it is read and then executed. So you need to learn about this whole life cycle, that how exactly JavaScript code works, how exactly JavaScript code runs, right? And as soon as you are very much comfortable with how exactly the lexical analysis works, then you need to learn about different use cases of scopes, that okay, when you use different type of variable initializers like let, var or const, how exactly the scoping are going to be done. Maybe if you are in strict mode, then how the scoping is going to be done. What are auto globals in JavaScript, how exactly they come into the picture when the lexical scoping is done for the corresponding code of JavaScript. So all of these concepts you need to learn, and these are going to lay down the foundation for the functional programming part of JavaScript. Trust me, if you understand this part of JavaScript, then definitely the 30% journey you have already done. You'll get this skill even more sharper with time when you will practice a lot of code, when you will write a lot of code of JavaScript. But as a beginner, I would highly recommend you guys to focus a lot on the concept of scopes, because this is going to be really very important. Apart from that, as soon as you have got a good understanding around scopes, then you should start learning closures. What are closures? Closure is a mechanism using which JavaScript closes over the value, right? So closures are going to be really important because we are going to write first order functions, right? We are going to write very complex nested functions and everything. We are going to have nested scopes. So how exactly the function remembers the closed value of a variable, this is something that you need to understand with closures. because later when we will be learning asynchronous programming, then also we will be able to realize that how exactly after some time some value is still getting restored. So closures is going to be really very important when you are going to learn with JavaScript. Then as soon as you are done with the concept of lexical scoping and the scoping analysis and closures, it's a really good time to start learning hoisting. Hoisting is, you can say, a consequence of how exactly lexical analysis is done in JavaScript, and it is going to be really very important when you want to write cleaner and easier code in JavaScript. So learn about what is hoisting, right? Because hoisting is a concept that a lot of people have heard about but don't know exactly how it works. And obviously lexical analysis is the things that is behind all of this scoping mechanism. After that, you can learn about advanced functions, you can learn about arrow functions, you can learn about different other functions that are already available in JavaScript, right? Like functions that are available with arrays, functions that are available with objects, these things. Because arrays and objects you have already learned when you were learning about the data types and complex data structures in JavaScript, and now you can learn about some inbuilt functions that are already given to you by JavaScript for these arrays and objects, and some other functions as well that are also going to help you for comparison of two different objects and everything. So these are some initial concepts that you should definitely learn when you are starting your journey with JavaScript, because functional programming is going to be there forever with JavaScript. The moment you are comfortable with functional programming, basic data types, closures, hoisting, it's a good time to understand how exactly JavaScript works, right? When I say JavaScript works, then I mean that how exactly the runtime environment of JavaScript works. Because JavaScript as a language is not that powerful, if you will see, but when combined with the relevant runtime like browser or Nodejs, then the capabilities of JavaScript are enhanced on a next level, right? So by default, JavaScript is a synchronous piece of code. Whenever you write a JavaScript code, is a synchronous piece of code. It gets executed line by line, line by line, line by line. But you know that we are able to do a lot of asynchronous activities in the browser, in the mobile phones, wherever JavaScript is running. So how exactly those works? Yes, the runtime is behind all of this. So you need to understand that how exactly JavaScript interacts with the corresponding runtime, right? If there is a feature of runtime that JavaScript want to, I would say, access, then how exactly that is done? So there are multiple features like making an API call using XML HTTP request, or maybe using timers, or you maybe using countdowns, or maybe doing DOM manipulation. All of these features are not primarily built with JavaScript. These features are available with runtime, and JavaScript accesses those features. So how exactly JavaScript accesses those features and how these features become asynchronous? What is event loop? Right, you need to understand, because event loop is going to be really important to understand how exactly JavaScript interacts with the runtime. You need to learn about what are event queues as well, because whenever you are going to have a callback response from your corresponding APIs, then in that case you need to understand how exactly callback queue works, event queue works, how exactly event loop works, right? In order to understand all of this, I would highly recommend you guys to have a firm understanding of callbacks as well, right? Because you have already learned basic functions, functional programming and everything. Now it's good time to understand how exactly callback works, how you can pass a callback, how in a function you can call a callback and everything, right? And then you'll be able to understand and actually have a hands-on experience on all of these asynchronous code. So this is going to be the initial step in asynchronous code. Then you need to understand that, okay, the way you are consuming the asynchronous code is not the best way, that is callbacks, right? So you need to understand what are the problems with callbacks. A lot of people think that the only problem with callbacks is callback hell, but no, there is one more very important problem, that is inversion of control. Learn about what is inversion of control, why callbacks possess inversion of control, and how you can solve the problem of inversion of control. And yes, you guessed it right. You can solve the problem of inversion of control using promises. Learn about the promise API that JavaScript provides. What is promise? How exactly promise object works, right? How exactly promise handles the whole life cycle of the request. Everything you need to understand in very in-depth, right? Then after promises, you can move forward that also promises possess a similar problem of promise hell. So how can you write even cleaner code of promises? Then you can hop on to async and await. In order to understand async await better, you need to have some concepts around generators as well. But if you are in a very initial stage of JavaScript, I believe generators are going to be very advanced concept for you. So for the timing, you can just stick on to how exactly async and await syntax work, how you can make your JavaScript code run in a much cleaner way using async await. There is also a concept called as async await hell, so you can read about how you can resolve that. So there are multiple things that are involved in this asynchronous programming. You need to also understand what is the difference between the event queue and job queue, which one is preferred, which one is not preferred. All of this, how exactly the life cycle of the whole request works. All of these things is going to be very important when you are going to build applications using JavaScript, because JavaScript is highly dependent on these topics. So I would highly recommend you guys to definitely check this out. And if you want to learn all of these concepts, the very recommended book from my side is going to be You Don't Know JS. I'll drop the link of You Don't Know JS in the comments below. It's a free book that is available on GitHub, so you can just go and start reading the book. I have also personally read the book and found it very interesting, with some really good examples and corner cases that everyone should definitely at least try once in their programming journey. The last part of basic introduction to JavaScript, I believe, is going to be how to handle object-oriented code in JavaScript. So JavaScript doesn't directly support everything that you have learned in OOPS of Java or C++. Rather than JavaScript has got its own way to handle the object-oriented things, right? So here we have prototypal inheritance. You need to learn about what is prototypes. You need to learn about what is prototypal inheritance. You need to learn about exactly what is an object in JavaScript. You need to understand how to initialize an object in JavaScript. You need to understand about classes, the class keyword. You need to understand the this keyword. So this keyword is also present in Java and C++. So you need to understand how exactly this keyword is working in JavaScript. What are the functionalities of this keyword that is done in JavaScript? You need to learn about the new keyword using which you can initialize object. You need to learn about the memory map that is exactly in your memory, how exactly the stack and the heap works. When you initialize a data type, is it exactly made in a stack or a heap? How exactly the whole memory thing works? How you can do abstraction in JavaScript, how you can do polymorphism in JavaScript. All of these things can be implemented in JavaScript. It's just that it's a bit different than the regular C++ and the Java way. So this is going to be very important in order to understand some really important concepts. When you will be going to learn some advanced frameworks, you will be writing a lot of classes and everything. So if you will have a good grip on how to write classes and objects in JavaScript, that is going to be really very beneficial for you. So this I would recommend is going to be the next very important step that as a beginner JavaScript programmer, you should definitely learn. These were all those concepts that I believe are really important as a beginner also, because if in the beginners these foundational concepts are missing, then a lot of people find JavaScript a bit weird. They are not able to understand the corner cases of JavaScript. They sometimes also rant about the fact that, okay, we are not able to understand how JavaScript is working. But these are some really important introductory concepts that everyone should learn. After this also, there are a lot of concepts of JavaScript that are much more advanced. There are concepts of currying and advanced functional programming, right? Even in asynchronous programming, there are advanced concepts. There is concepts of generators and everything. So obviously there is a lot more to learn in JavaScript. There are patterns that you can make, the design patterns that you can make with JavaScript. Definitely you can take even more deeper dive. But before moving to that part in your JavaScript programming journey, I would highly recommend you guys to start building something, right? Because I believe that if you know the language well, frameworks are going to be really cakewalk. So if you want to start building your front-end application, I would highly recommend you guys to make maybe first a resume page for yourself, a good classical resume that you can make using JavaScript, HTML and CSS. Using that, you'll be able to understand how exactly you can use different DOM APIs that are available from the browser to JavaScript, right? Apart from that, you can even host that resume page, and that can be helpful in your interviews as well. You can make some cool basic JavaScript based games like ping pong or maybe 2048 kind of a game. There are some physics engine libraries of JavaScript that you can use in order to make some games even more interesting, to add the real life, I would say, touch on those games. Because if you will try to make these kind of projects I believe you will get a better hands-on experience on JavaScript. Whatever concepts we learned till now, all those concepts will be actually going in front of you, working in front of you, and you will be actually applying those concepts, and those will not be like just any theory that you have learned, right? So try to make more and more projects, and I would also recommend you guys to start learning any framework, maybe Vue.js or React.js. In the initial days, it can be a bit overwhelming to get a lot of bombardment of information on those, I would say, frameworks. But if you know the language well, I will emphasis on it again. If you will know the language well, the frameworks are going to be, or the libraries are going to be really very easy. So you can get started with React, make some basic, maybe IMDb like page, or maybe a simple Netflix like SPA. You can make a bit of front end, because React is something that is going to be really very important in the job market for a lot of upcoming years as well. You can see already a lot of React jobs are there. So if you want to become a React developer, then also JavaScript is really very important. Right, so I would then recommend you to go forward with these libraries, explore these libraries, make some basic projects as soon as you have learned all of these beginner concepts. So if you want to start your journey with JavaScript, these were some of my recommendations as topic in order what you should learn, right? As I already said, there are even more advanced concepts of JavaScript that are still remaining, but I believe you cannot learn a language 100% in one go. Sometimes you need to have a head start, then build something, and slowly and steadily with time, with experience, you learn a lot of things about that language. This is how exactly I learned things. This is how I prefer things, and this is how I recommend things as well. So everything that I discussed was completely my opinion. If you think that any fundamental concept I missed, then don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, that some more concepts you feel are really important as a beginner to learn in JavaScript. And if you found the video to be useful enough, then don't forget to share the video to your friends. Don't forget to like the video if you found it informational, and if you are enjoying the content on the channel, then what are you waiting for? Do hit the subscribe button, do hit the bell icon, so that you never miss a video on our channel. That was it on today's video. I hope you guys liked it, and we will meet very soon in some other video on the channel. So till then, take care guys, bye bye, have a great week ahead, and love you all.